City of Dexter Council meeting. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Bonnie will lead us. The flag is on the screen here.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Pam, are you ready to call the roll?
Yes. Laura.
Here.
Cousins. Fisher.
Yes.
Griffin. Hubbard. Here. Michelle.
Present.
Keo.
Here.
Keating. Here. And Dee Gregorio is absent.
Yes, he notified us earlier. Item C this evening is approval of the meeting minutes from our city council meeting of August 22nd, 2022. Is there a motion to approve the minutes? Moved by Griffin, thank you.
I second.
By Rob, thank you. Okay, any comments?
I do not have any.
Okay. And we have with us this evening Sue Dancer. She is representing the group that supports Constitution Week and the importance of the Constitution, obviously, in our great United States of America. And I have a proclamation to read that Sue is present for. Sue, did you want to say words about that ahead of time, or should I go with the proclamation first?
Let's do proclamation and not follow up.
Okay, thank you. Not too long, so whereas September 17th, 2022 marks the 235th anniversary of the drafting of the Constitution of the United States of America by the Constitutional Convention. And whereas it is fitting and proper to officially recognize this magnificent document and the anniversary of its creation. And whereas it is fitting and proper to encourage, support, and recognize the patriotic celebrations which will commemorate the occasion. And whereas the Constitution of the United States of America, the guardian of our liberties, embodies the principles of limited government in a republic dedicated to rule by law. And whereas Public Law 915 guarantees the issuing of a proclamation each year by the President of the United States of America, designating September 17th through 23rd as Constitution Week. Now therefore, I, Sean Keough, Mayor of Dexter, Michigan, do hereby proclaim September 17th to 23rd, 2022 as Constitution Week and urge all citizens to take note of the observance. Sue, welcome.
Do you want me just to stay here?
Wherever you're comfortable.
Okay. I want to thank you for having me here tonight and for the proclamation celebrating Constitution Week. I'd also like to thank Sharon Clark, who was a former DAR Daughters of the American Revolution Regent, who helped coordinate this proclamation. I'm Sue Dancer, and I'm a member of the Sarah Caswell Angel chapter of the Daughters of the American Revolution. The DAR is a nonprofit, non-political, volunteer women's service organization dedicated to preserving the memory and spirit of the men and women who achieved this American independence. It is our mission to actively promote patriotism, preserve American history, and secure Americans' future through better education for children. We sponsor scholarships, educational initiatives, service to veterans, community service, and commemorate events such as Constitution Week. As you know, our country has two founding documents, the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. While we celebrated the Independence Day since Revolutionary War times, the signing of the Constitution on September 17, 1787 had no special commemoration for 168 years. In 1955, the Daughters of the American Revolution petitioned Congress to dedicate September 17th through the 23rd of each year to commemorate the Constitution. Congress adopted this resolution. President Eisenhower signed it the following year. Since then, presidents, governors, and mayors have issued proclamations celebrating this week. This year marks the 235th anniversary of the United States Constitution. We've had regular federal elections every 2 years since ratification. Through a civil war, 2 world wars, the Great Depression, social upheaval, and a terrorist attack on 9/11. Why has our Constitution endured when others have come and gone? First, it's a statement of fundamental principles of the government with restraints, but also allows for innovation. Amending the Constitution is difficult but not impossible. Many amendments have been proposed, but only 23 have passed. Second, the Constitution was the world's first enshrining self-governance. We the people chose our leaders rather than inheriting a monarch or having a dictator imposed on us. Third, our culture of respect for the Constitution continues to give life to the document written 235 years ago. Loyalty to the Constitution, however one chooses to define it, is an enduring feature of American life. In closing, let's remember the words of the preamble of the Constitution. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. So this evening, we celebrate the signing of the Constitution on September 17th, 1787, and continue to be mindful of the importance of the Constitution in our country's future. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Sue. Item approval of the agenda.
Move to approve the agenda as presented.
Moved by Fisher. Second by Scott. Thank you both. Any discussion on the agenda? Pam, please call the vote to approve the agenda.
Hubbard,
Yes.
Michelle.
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
Morrow,
Yes.
Griffin. Yes. Keel.
Yes. Thank you. Motion carries. Item F on the agenda is declaration of conflicts of interest. Do we have any?
I didn't see it. I just wanted to confirm with someone who knows better. We're not paying my employer this silver, are we? I didn't see it. It normally has the cover sheet, and I didn't see that.
Yeah, it didn't print off right, and so, but the GL distribution report is still in here and reflective of all of
And
the.
I didn't see it,
different
so
lines.
I guess I don't have it.
None this evening. We have no public hearing this evening, so we're down to non-arranged participation. Please, anyone that would like to speak, please introduce yourself, state your name and address for the record, if you would, please.
My name is Dan Schlauff. I live at 7939 4th Street in Dexter. I'm very excited to announce I will be running for city council in the upcoming November election as a write-in candidate. Because of all my past 37 years experience working for the city and living here the majority of my life, I feel my history, my experience, my perspective would make me a valuable addition to city council if the voters choose. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Dan. Good luck to you. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to speak this evening on the item? Is there anyone online that would like to speak this evening? If so, please use the raise hand feature or the chat room to let our host know. No hands, no chat. Okay. All right. Well, that concludes non-arranged participation at this time. We are down to communications. Item I on the agenda, our meeting calendar. Does anybody have any comments on the meeting list? Zach?
The upcoming CapGuard meeting next month, we're going to have someone from Spark out to speak with us. And the month after that, we're going to have someone come to talk to us about Trail Towns.
So October is Spark
Yep.
and November is Trail Towns. Okay. Thank you. Okay,
Do we know how long we'll be meeting here? Do you have any idea?
So at least through the first meeting in October. It depends on how quickly we can get, I think I noted in here that we ran into an issue with the columns, the replacement columns at the new city hall. And we're working through the process of figuring out what alternatives there are, or what the solution is to the problem.
any other comments on the meeting list? Okay, we'll move down to our first report this evening. From Tim Stewart, Public Services Superintendent. Welcome, Tim.
How's everybody tonight?
Very good. You?
Good, thanks. We have a 3-week report from you. If there's any questions, I can take those and I got some other stuff to add to that afterwards.
I just wanted to say thanks for answering the questions. I submitted a number of them in the supplement. Thank you for that.
No problem.
Tim, oh, go ahead, sorry.
I have a question about, I don't think it was on the report, but the speed sign on Dexter and Arbor coming to Dexter, the 40 mile speed. I think it is there, but it's still covered.
It's still covered?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, so we're still waiting on the permit, the right of way permit from Washington County Road Commission to install, hey, heads up, speed is reduced in that zone. So the city of Dexter will be installing a sign in the Washington County right of way, but they have to approve us to do that, and we've submitted the permit request, and now we're just waiting for them to approve it.
Thank you.
What else?
I just wondered which white fence we power wash.
The white fence that they put around for Pink Dexter or the round ice
You
rink and
cleaned
stuff.
it. I see, you cleaned, I got it.
I don't, sometimes things can be a little vague, but I figured everybody knew because,
No, that makes sense. I just didn't think of that.
no, you're fine, you're fine. Anything else? Well, I got a couple things. Working on the stop signs for Jamie as far as where they're at. The problem is, I went and took a look at it. I'm thinking that the reason that they're up there, how far they are up is because the sight distance, as far as when you're trying to look left, all you see is cars parked there. And I think that's the reason. I don't know. Kurt and I are looking into it that way, but I went and looked at it myself and it's kind of hard if you're back far because it's all those cars are in the way.
I just don't know if there's a liability to the city at all to have a stop sign on the far side of a sidewalk.
No, and I understand. I want to look into it more too,
Yeah.
because there might be a code of some sort that tells me, well, where you can
Right.
and how it can. That being said, too, I mean, you could put it before, like we were saying, people would stop, but then they'd still encroach in, to see. I have a hard time,
Right.
and I'm in a
Those
big truck.
huge right of ways or, right.
Right.
I mean, legally, you're supposed to stop at the stop sign
Yep.
and then advance.
Yep.
And so I just don't know. Are we getting ourselves into a situation if there is a pedestrian and there's a driver and they see the stop sign, but not,
Right. But we're
Well,
done.
I think it is incumbent upon the driver to stop for pedestrians, whether or not there's a stop sign.
right.
The pedestrian has the right of way.
Right. But like I said, we're still looking into it, it's been busy and got a few people out sick, so.
That's fine. No.
Just as a follow-up to, it's not exactly stop sign, but are all the RRFPs working?
Sorry.
Are all the rectangular rapid flashing
Yes.
lights working?
As far as I know, there was one that was having a problem on Dan Hoy. Actually, Dan called me and then I seen it myself as I was driving up there. It was not functioning. And as of last Thursday, I think Kurt said they didn't take care of it.
Okay.
So, and then they were working on was Dan Hoy and Dexter Ann Arbor as far as the switching that out to what we were talking about before with the pedestrian walk and stuff. And I'm pretty positive, I'll double check, but I think he's got it all taken care of, so. We talked about the grass and stuff over on Second Street. They will be here. We talked to the landscapers themselves. They'll be here tomorrow. They will put down the rest of the herbicide that needs to kill the rest of the crabgrass that's there. And they will be out 1 week from then to do whatever it takes, whether it's putting black dirt down, raking up, doing what they gotta do, and then receiving everything back to where it was. So they're pretty well on it, more than I thought they would be. And hopefully we didn't catch it too late in the season, but
Should be good time.
yeah,
But we are holding retainer
right.
until it is fully taken.
Maybe that's why they're working with us so much. The pavers, they'll be out Wednesday through Friday on Broad and Third, and hopefully wrapping that up pretty soon. I think substantial was the 5th of October completion. So that means that everything goes well and weather's good. We'll be taking care of that this week. The other thing was talking about tours. I know you guys have talked about that in the past. We are going to hold a small one with multi-lakes every year, Friday at around 1 o'clock. So if anybody's interested, you guys are welcome to give Justin or myself an email, choose the thing, and you guys can come along.
Tim, what's the latest on the last bit of concrete sidewalk work on Third Street there, up across from the mill?
So what they're gonna be doing is, once they get everything in, they're gonna be putting a whole sidewalk and everything, but they had to wait to take care of the wall first, and get that wall up. Once that's done, they're gonna run the whole new sidewalk going through. So
Okay,
we had to change a couple things, but that's the point.
yeah, okay. So they'll do that after the paving then?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So
No switchbacks.
no switchbacks. No, thank you. Not that I've been told. So it looks like everything's gonna run okay. Anything else?
I think so. You guys dust off the leaf machine?
Got a lot of things they're working on right now. It's been a busy week, so
It's gonna be that season.
Today it feels like fall.
yeah, it's been nice out like it. Good.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much. Next up is our community development manager. Michelle, how are you?
I'm getting better each day. Thank you for asking. How's council this evening?
Good, thank you.
Excellent. Okay, so before I go into updates, you have before you my staff report. I've also provided an update in the supplemental report. Again, before I go into any other updates, do you have any questions that I can answer for you on either of these, the report or the supplemental information?
Michelle, I want to just say a couple things. Michelle and I spoke the day after the meeting, or the meeting that didn't occur officially. I guess I would like council's guidance on this or whatever, but I expressed to Michelle that I thought that they should have opened the meeting. They had enough people in person to open the meeting. And I think if they decide not to take any action, I think we're better off if we have a quorum opening the meeting and then deciding that and letting us have an official meeting record from which to benchmark against, rather than not having the meeting and coming up with an informal, whatever we're calling this. What did you put in here? It was a phrase,
Public presentation.
informal public engagement session. You know, there's nothing wrong with the feedback that we got, but I would like to see us open meetings when we have a quorum. The virtual component that we offer on every meeting, to my knowledge, is not a requirement of the Open Meetings Act. It's not a reason we shouldn't have to have the meeting. It may be a reason where somebody wants to say, hey, because we don't have it, we want to wait to take action. To me, that's perfectly acceptable if that body should decide to do so at that time. But I think we want to express to the chairs of all of our committees that if they have a quorum and we've publicly noticed the meeting, they should open it and close it properly, so we can at least then vote on meeting minutes at the next meeting, they're official and such. So I did express that to Michelle, and assuming I have your concurrence, my plan is to talk to each of the chairs of the different boards and kind of share the examples so that they understand the expectation. And I would ask for staff's help in doing that as well, as you meet with the different bodies.
So the only issue is that we couldn't get the Zoom participants and they were subject to streaming.
Yeah, I believe there was an issue with getting Zoom operational.
But it was operational enough that Michelle was able to be at least visible or participate somehow,
Right.
because she was there to hear it, or just her sound quality was bad coming in or out, or while I was there, so.
But yeah, it also took us maybe 20 or 30 minutes to even get to that point. So there was discussion about whether or not people had tried to, were there, couldn't figure out what's happening, left, we weren't sure of all those things. And I will say too, Sean, that it seemed like we had, and I mean, I guess I shouldn't, we had a discussion about opening the meeting and about not taking action. And it seemed like there was support there to do it. And then I just think in the chaos of trying to get something to work, that sort of just didn't happen.
Well, I appreciate that everybody stuck around and that you had a discussion with those that were there. I just think that it puts us in a stronger spot to be able to have meeting minutes, and I'm sure we can explain this, it's not the first time the technology's failed on something, but if anybody has any concerns with that, let me know. Zach?
So having had to run a bunch of public meetings, planning commissions, EVAs all over the world, the thing that I think of is the tech isn't required for a public meeting. People have to be able to attend, but if you've promised it and they're expecting it and they don't, it'd be very difficult to prove anything on that night. But at the same time, if it's something that requires a public hearing and you've advertised it, you sent out the letters like we did to all the property owners. If you open the public hearing and then postpone to a later date, to a specific date, you aren't required to go through all the notice because everyone who's interested can show there. And that's generally how I like to handle it. If we know we're not going to be able to decide, open it, postpone it to a specific date.
Yeah, that would still take place at a meeting.
Well,
Right? And that would,
Yeah.
you can't postpone something officially, well, I guess you already did by not having a meeting, but it makes more sense to.
Yeah, exactly. I think some of what we were struggling with in the moment was the most people we've had in the room since COVID. And it was really hard to tell those people, hey, you took your time to come here tonight, but sorry, we're not going to do anything. We're not going to have this public hearing. And, leave and please come back next month and make that work too. I just felt like inconveniencing the 15 people that were here was not a great idea. So I'm not sure how we get around that.
I simply think you have another public hearing. I mean, if you feel that strongly that you didn't get all the comment, you just schedule another public hearing. And the process that you're in takes another month or another whatever. It isn't that hard to do. I mean, you catch the 15 at that time, and then at the second one, you get whoever else wants to come back. Or
This is the last thing I'll say. And yes, that makes sense, but I think the concern we had was because there was such a long delay on the front end that we may have had people who were going to be online for a public hearing that weren't there anymore.
understood. Right. Okay, we can talk about the comments if we want. I just wanted to procedurally discuss what happened and what I think we need to make sure we're reinforcing for the future. So, Michelle, back to you.
Okay. If there are no other questions about the planning commission meeting, and I appreciate the guidance from council regarding the meeting, excuse me, and we'll endeavor to follow that in the future. And in the event that anything like this happened again, I piggyback off what Zach said. If we are promoting it as both in person and virtual, and we have some sort of technical difficulty that prevents the virtual attendance, we would open the meeting, open the public hearing, but postpone it, notify it, even though technically we wouldn't be required to, we would, so that when planning came back the next month to hold the public hearing, people would have notice, and we've covered all of our bases. If anybody wants a copy of what was recorded, I can send that out to you. I know, Jamie, you had asked for it, and I haven't gotten it to you yet. but I will send that out tomorrow. If all of council knows they want it, just let me know and I'll just make sure that I send it tomorrow when I send the link to Jamie.
So I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but not everybody can make every meeting. So
Okay.
not everybody can make every meeting. So I mean, if people took the time to come, I think it would have been better to open the public hearing, take their official comment, and then just say we're going to have another one, because there's no guarantee that those 15 can make the next meeting when you
Mhm.
reschedule it.
I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. Noted.
Realize that was an option, so that's something that I would make clear. We're gonna talk to all the chairs, that is an option.
When it comes to the Main Street banner, I've provided some information about how the Main Street banner will be handled in the zoning ordinance. You'll recall that it was in the current ordinance more as a temporary sign. And if we were to continue to do it that way, we would have to make sure that it was open to both commercial and non-commercial speech. My understanding or reading of council and policy is that commercial messaging is not a direction that you're ready to go. Therefore, in order to still have a Main Street banner, we're going to need to do it as one that's within the public right of way, because we then do have the option through the application process to be a little more subjective, if you will. Okay.
Where did you learn that?
Going through the update and with Megan and looking over and understanding the Reed versus Gilbert decision.
Okay.
Okay. The only other way to do it, Sean, would be not to have a Main Street banner anymore. And I didn't think that was the direction that the community wanted to go.
Sorry, maybe I missed something. Is that in the packet?
It's in the supplement on the third page, under questions from council. It's 1, 2, 3, the third one down.
Oh, I see. You asked about it. Okay. I didn't understand where it came from.
Okay, sorry about that.
I didn't.
You'll recall that I've been working with the Washtenaw County Building Department as part of our whole rental inspection, what is up and coming or being worked on right now, but also property maintenance. There were a couple of properties that I asked them from a building code standpoint to please take a look at. One of them was 8250 Huron. And when they went out and did their inspection, they did notice that the building appeared to be unsafe. And so they posted a notice. And at the same time, they also noticed a questionable liquid on the ground and contacted Water Resources, who then contacted Eagle. Those are separate processes that are being worked through and investigated currently due to the proximity of that particular parcel to the Huron River. We were out there again today to see how things are going. The property owner has started to reconstruct or fix the building. The difficulty with that is, though, he has not gotten his zoning compliance or a building permit. So the county had to put a stop work order. Hopefully we can get the property owner to follow the processes so that the building can get fixed up. But that's where we are right now. Excuse me, I'm so sorry. One correction in my report, when I did this report, I had been asked to be part of an interview panel for the city of Chelsea. Due to a conflict of interest with one of the potential candidates, I ended up having to recuse myself. So I didn't end up sitting on the panel. Other than that, do you have any questions? How do you like the format of the new annual planning report?
I thought it looked nice.
Thank you.
So Michelle, have you recontacted all 14 members of the public that were at the planning commission meeting?
I have not recontacted all of them. I have, excuse me, I'm so sorry. We are working on that. We have been in contact with a number of them before the meeting actually, and provided information. One of the property owners, the one for 3670 Central, we are working out a time to meet, hopefully tomorrow. But we'll work with them.
Are these comments that you've summarized here in the order of the members of the public of the audience that are up above?
No, there's not a clear, what's the best way? There's not a clear way to identify who said what because of when Megan and Grace were in person, they were concentrating on listening as opposed to necessarily detailed note-taking as to who said what. But they did have a general idea of where people were, and Grace did have a sign-in sheet. I know some of the comments, who they are attributed to, but I can't say that I know all of them. And so I erred on the side of, okay, who do I know? Who don't I know? And I just put the generalized. Other than the ones at the very end where it talks about specific property owners and their property. Okay.
Well, I read in your report that we will be scheduling meetings with these property owners to get the root of their concerns. So I think it would be helpful if we could put the people that spoke with the comment.
I will attempt to do that, Sean. I don't know that everyone will want to have a follow-up appointment. We will certainly try. Like I said, we have met with certain ones already. 3268 Central, for example. It'll be a decision, as I've laid out in my in the supplement, how we handle different uses that weren't contemplated and aren't currently allowed per their zoning district. So does that make sense?
Yeah, I just think I mean, the thing that seems missing to me is that you would assign a comment to a property.
We'll endeavor to do that and have that for the next meeting. How's that?
That would be great.
I may be able to help with that, Michelle. So if
Yeah,
there's
that's a
any
good
of them
idea.
that you can't figure out, I may be able to help with that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Notes, that'd be great.
I mean, I took mental notes and they're still pretty clear in my mind.
Yeah,
And
that'd be great.
so, and a lot of them are my neighbors, honestly.
Okay.
So,
Cool. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Well,
That's it.
I mean, and the reason for that is I may want to follow up with some of these folks, but on their concern, but I don't want to. I guess I could do it generally, but it'd be nice to know specifically what their concern was.
Okay, we will, do you want this list then before the next meeting, Sean?
I mean, yeah, as soon as it's possible, yes, please.
Okay,
Oh, thanks for helping with that. I just think it makes sense to be able to know the perspective.
how about if I do this? I'll work with Grace and and try to assign the comments to the different addresses. And then I will email them out to everyone on council.
Thank you.
Okay.
Samantha?
I have a question. I saw that Noble Appliances is reopening. Any information of what happened? Not that I'm sad they're reopening, it was just unexpected because we heard they were selling and then they're reopening.
Yeah, they are trying to sell the property and then do a lease with a new owner. I don't think they've been successful at that yet. At least I have not heard that they have. Basically what they did is they sort of reorganized themselves, both their space and their business model, in order to be able to continue to operate out of the storefront in Dexter Crossing. If the zoning would allow a more warehouse type situation, that probably would have worked better for their model. But that's not allowed. And so they took probably about 60 days, I think, to get their reorganization in hand, both their business model and internally. And when I say reorganization inside, they didn't do construction. It's just a matter of organizing the store in a manner that is more conducive to retail operations, and backroom repairs, repackaging, assembly, things like that aren't done in the open on the sales floor.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, so a follow-up on that. So was that something initiated by the city? Did the city reach out? Did the city reach out to Noble Appliance and say, hey, it appears you're operating as a warehouse? That needs to change?
I did reach out to them when I found out, when I was doing a parking lot inspection earlier in, in the summer, that it was they had a note on the door that they were closed. And so I reached out to them to find out what was going on and to make sure that they understood that what the zoning required. And so that, like I said, they took that in hand and did what they need to do in order to reopen under the correct zoning.
Thanks. I have one more follow-up on a different, is there a whiskey distillery opening downtown?
I'm sorry, say,
A whiskey distillery?
so it's a tasting room for spirits, including whiskey, which is made off-site. So it'll be brought in, it'll be distributed, just like a tasting room at Jolly Pumpkin or up in the northern Michigan where you've got the wineries, but they're not producing it on site. They won't have food or prepared food. They might have nuts, chips, pretzels, kind of thing that enhance the flavor of the spirit. But they have to go through special use approval with Planning Commission, and then they'd come to City Council. And because currently in our ordinance, we don't have a use that's tasting room, it is and has been considered a bar, tavern, or lounge use.
So
Where is that proposed? I had that.
3126 Broad Street, the old Encore, in the middle unit.
Thank you.
So then is there any work on that building that's allowed at this time without those approvals?
No. To the best of my, well, the building owner has zoning compliance and a building permit to make it white box ready. and he's had that for a while, so.
Someone just mentioned that they had seen work being done there. Maybe it's just that.
Most likely just that, but we can double check it just to be sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. If there are no other questions or comments, that,
Zach has a question, Michelle.
oh, okay, I couldn't see his hand, sorry.
Question from 3 weeks ago, are the folks still parking on the sidewalk on Alpine, or they
No.
stopped doing?
So I had a very frank conversation with the owner. Nobody has been parking there that I'm aware of. Let's see, it's been 3 weeks, so the 2 weeks prior to the holiday, each day I would check when I was in the office, and I did not see the car parked. I can't tell you what went on last week, as I ended up having to work from home. But I have not heard anybody else complain that.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Michelle? Okay, we will move down on the agenda then. I believe we're over on page 3 to city manager report, Justin.
Sure. Does anybody have any questions from my report or the supplement?
How are you feeling?
I'm feeling all right. So we did have an interesting couple of weeks between the power outage and then I was diagnosed with COVID a little over 10 or 11 days ago. It was the Friday before last. But I have since tested negative, and I was feeling fine pretty much the entire time. It was sinus congestion and that sort of thing. Feeling fine, thank you. But just
Any lingering damage from the power outage?
not that I've noticed. So our staff did a really good job of dealing with the downed trees and limbs. But you know, we got the generators going for the streetlights downtown. Fortunately, our water and wastewater plants were not impacted by the long-term outage. And so they were able to continue operating. But the office was down for a few days, which impacted our ability to access our server and files. So something we might want to look for at some point in the future is a generator for the new building. But that doesn't necessarily have to be immediate. We did get notice from the railroad that they're doing evening work, midnight to 6 a.m. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of ability to control those hours of operation. But a couple of years ago, they did indicate that they were going to be modifying the curve of the track to accommodate high-speed rail. And I have not heard if that is part of this project or if it's just replacement of railroad ties. I have reached out to the government affairs rep at Amtrak and left him a couple of messages and a email, and have not heard anything back from them. We are expecting that absentee ballots will go out either the 23rd or the 24th of this month for the November election. There are 3 state proposals and then 2 city proposals and a Dexter library proposal. So it's going to be quite a long ballot, quite a bit on the front and the back. From the supplement, we are going to be having the ACH is going to be hosting the S'mores and More event immediately following Apple Days on October 1st. This is the event where we invite the community to come out and do kind of performative act. And Then we also offer s'mores and little fire tables for them to roast marshmallows. It went over pretty well last year. I don't think the attendance was as high as ACH was hoping because of rain, but try again. We also have gotten requests, one from the schools to modify the school zone along Dan Way, to push it back from 7:45 to 7:30 start time. And then also to relocate the post further south on Dan Way towards Walkabout Creek. So we're gonna be working with OHM and DPW to evaluate that request. Barring any significant, if any of council has any strong feelings on that, take those into consideration as we're going through this process, but I don't see a lot of significant challenges to being able to accommodate that request.
Does that just involve us passing the traffic control order of some type?
I believe so. Yeah, but I just want to make sure that there aren't any state laws relating to school zones before bringing that forward. And then we also did get another request about speed bumps in Westridge. And I wanted to provide a little bit of information about why we try to steer folks away from speed bumps and instead work towards enforcement and putting the radar sign out and try and deal with the issues that way. But if anybody has any thoughts on that, happy to talk about that more.
Yeah, so it does seem like there needs to be an effective alternative. And I don't know how effective speed bumps are, but I do continue hearing from residents that enforcement is very
So
non-existent, or you're right, difficult to see, recognize, is it even happening here? So I don't know what needs to happen to figure that, like how much traffic enforcement is actually happening in the city, just to get an assessment of like what that is, so we can tell people, hey, this is how much this is actually happening versus not. I mean, I know we see in the report, maybe how many stops and that sort of thing, but we also talked about how there can be stops for any number of reasons. So I don't know. I appreciate that people reach out to us when they have a concern. I wish we could have a better answer for them than enforcement that they don't actually think happens.
Well, I talked to Justin a little bit about this. You know, unfortunately, in Westridge, at the location that this resident is brought forth, it's our fellow, or my fellow Westridge residents, they're the ones that are causing the problem. I mean, most people aren't cutting down Parkridge to get over somewhere else. And so I asked Justin if there was a way we could do, you know, maybe some targeted mailings or educational effort to say, hey, look, you know, we're receiving complaints at these locations. If you drive past these locations, be mindful of the fact that you might be going too fast. But to try to reach out to people, because I suppose it's possible that the perception is that people aren't speeding, but chances are some of them are, and that it's a given. I don't know, just throwing ideas out there. I mean, there's no hard and fast way to do it. We know the police officer can't sit there 100% of the time, and you can't force anybody to read anything. I mean, unless there's a non-obtrusive speed bump that could be put up that doesn't involve whatever bumping in the ground, you know, it seems like just a seasonal thing you could do. I don't think you'd want that there in the winter. But I agree with you. I think we need to keep trying to keep it in front of us because it's obviously a real concern. Else people wouldn't complain about it.
Throw out there another potential Ann Arbor cobblestone effect. If we let the roads deteriorate there, folks won't be able to go faster than 15. Sort itself out.
I don't,
You're giving credit to Ann Arbor.
I call it Ann Arbor cobblestone effect. Yeah.
I don't know. I've driven down Black Alpine and they have signs there that say, we love our kids, drive slowly. And every time I see those, I check how fast I'm going. So I don't know how much signage you already have there, but it's good. That one for sure makes me like double check that I'm going to slower than 20.
Good suggestion.
Sorry, I just want to add that when I was on Dexter Crossing HOA, that was the largest number of questions I would get. Can we put speed bumps? Just FYI, sort of.
I think one of the challenges is, once you open that door,
Yeah.
there's no closing it, and you'll end up with speed bumps on every road. Because invariably, at some point, someone sees someone speeding in front of their house and takes issue with it, and then wants a speed bump in front of on their street. And so we could run into a challenge where, how do we evaluate which streets get speed bumps? And what do we do when folks say, well, that street over there has a speed bump, I want one on mine, why do you do it for them and not for me? Unless we are willing to place speed bumps on pretty much every residential road in the city.
Yeah, yes, Jim, a question.
Oh, sure.
Tim, what does it do to snowplow?
Sorry.
What do these speed bumps do to snowplowing? How's that affect
Oh,
your
that's
department?
creates a heck of a havoc on us and the machines and stuff like that for snow plows. It would just, it's not a good thing. You know, I'm sitting here listening to all this and I can respect everybody's wishes and stuff, but we all drive cities and other states here, everywhere around this state. And if you go in the subdivision, I've never seen a speed bump in a subdivision itself. I've seen them in private entities and stuff, but I've never personally seen them. They'll be a maintenance nightmare for us, like
I
you
was gonna
said.
say, can you even plow it?
I don't think you could, because when we're plowing, you have to get enough speed to be able to push that snow.
Yeah.
Especially if you get a heavy snow. So, I mean, like you said, I understand what you said about removing them, but you're adding more work and now you're putting holes in roads and so.
Yeah, I don't want to put holes in
No,
roads.
no. And to what Zach said, unfortunately, Westridge is the best Paisley rating we got in the whole city, so those shouldn't be deterring anything soon.
I honestly think we should mail people a letter.
Yeah, I mean,
And
public notice is.
tell everybody, treat everybody the same, don't leave anybody out, mail it to, and target, and all these places where people have complained, we should list them in the letter. And make people more and more aware.
I think in new enforcement,
That would also help.
I mean, if you want to send them a letter, but then the sheriff needs to be there the following week, and they need to work on a rotating list of these are the places in town you get the complaints. However you manage your traffic enforcement, we want you here, 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 and here. Rotate through these spots. I mean, I don't want to tell them how to do their job, but I would propose that and get feedback from them and try to work towards something. People already have the notice, they see what the speed limit is. They're not doing it.
And if you, like you said, if you get a notice out to everybody and then even if the police are there for a month, you know, just, I don't know. Once they get that presence, then they'll slow down. And then how long it lasts, we don't know, but problems, like I said, speed bumps are a nightmare, especially for me.
I have seen in a subdivision in Nebraska, these, I don't know what, I'm trying to figure out what it's called. It's basically like a dugout in the road. It's like the reverse of a hump. Do you know, I don't even know what these are called. I went through it, you just like totally let them
Where was this at?
it's somewhere in Nebraska.
Oh, okay.
I can't think what they're called, and maybe I'm misremembering. So probably a problem with lots.
I mean, I would definitely, I'd put something out there and I'd notify the police. That's just me.
Let's try and start there.
It's something that's fairly probably cheap and not expensive.
Zach?
It's a different topic if this one's right. Yeah.
Sure.
I've got actually a number of questions about the Fido Pump. Do we have an idea when that might appear in our fair city?
Yeah, so Kurt, I've been talking with Kurt about possible locations, and the latest idea that we have, I think we've likely settled on, is replacing the existing fountain in Monument Park with a Fido fountain.
Concrete pillow.
Yeah, I saw that and thought that would be very nice. And then I thought about all the families that have kids down there. And I'm not afraid of anybody's dog, but there are a lot of people that are. So you're calling all the dogs to come to that area, which could be picnic, family area. I think we need to think that through before we make that choice.
Wow.
I would say the dogs are already there, Donna. I mean, I walk my dog through there constantly. It's at the edge of the park. It's not like it's in the
You
middle
don't
of the
think the
grass.
cops would be calling them in?
No, I mean, I think people walk their dogs downtown and they walk through that park when they do that.
Okay.
I mean, that's just my gut instinct on that is that I mean,
Yeah, and my thought on it is having the Parks and Recreation Commission make the recommendation to city council to accept the
I was saying,
donation.
as long as they talk
along
it
with the
through,
location.
I can go either way, but I want them to think it through.
Other questions on Justin's report?
One thing was the 9B comment about the Mill Creek Middle School left turn. I went to that school for 2 years and I rode with my mom every day. There is no way to turn left into that school on a green light. I mean, essentially, I mean, cars are going past there, you have to turn on yellow or red, and it's dangerous. I mean, I saw this and immediately knew about it, because there is no way to get to school.
Yeah, this has come up in the past, and I've thought, I mean, multiple times, I've thought, do we need to reach out to the school board? Who do we reach out to? Because one thing we talked about was if they were able to add a right turn lane so that there was expand their right turn lane. So the people coming, from downtown turn right into their lane, the people going left turn into their lane, and it's expanded, it's 2 lanes wide to get into that. I don't know, I would be happy to start the conversation myself or some representative of the city do it. But it seems like they should at least be notified.
I think that's the most practical solution.
Right, yeah, you suggested that, so I don't know, Jessica, can we talk to them or?
So,
Because if it's backed up, even if you have a dedicated left turn around for the direction she's talking about, they wouldn't be able to turn through.
It's not
There's no
dedicated.
gap,
Right.
there's no spot for them to turn into.
Right. So they need a dedicated left turn lane for just those people.
so I in looking at the notes from kind of the last time we talked about this, I think we had gotten a proposal from OHM to do an evaluation. But we did not approve it at that point. Is this something that you would like to do a more kind of thorough investigation on? Because if it involves work in the right of way, if that right-hand turn lane would fall within the right of way, it might be our cost potentially.
So if OHM, for example, would need to spend money to evaluate options, yeah, we should figure out what the options are before we go to school. We'd have to spend some money probably. Which is worthwhile doing, I don't want to do it. It's not-
Right, I just don't know at what point does it get on the school property if they're adding another lane. I don't know
Yeah,
when it's
we
school
would,
property.
we would explain what we think would work best from analyzing the intersection and then kind of draft concepts that would go off of our property into the school property. We just have to present it to them. Maybe you could give Dr. Timmons the heads up that we're gonna look at that, if we in fact are gonna look at it.
Okay.
Is council willing to see a little proposal to study that? Okay, if you could bring back that proposal, Justin? Yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think that my recollection too, the last time it didn't go anywhere, is it seemed like what they were proposing to study was something we already had an answer to, or we were content with the answer we had from however many years prior. So what the proposal is to actually investigate, hey, to what extent could we improve this by doing this multiple lane thing? That seems like new information. Might be happening.
I recall the question we posed to them was, is there enough traffic to warrant a
A dedicated
dedicated
left turn, and I think that's
light
right.
signal?
Yeah.
Yeah, the question should be, what can we do to improve it?
Mhm.
And more, even going further than, but what physical pavement improvement can we make to it?
Floor is still yours. Do you want to talk about the schedule at all, or city hall, or anything there?
Yeah, so you have kind of the latest schedule for improvements to 3515 Broad. This was provided before we ran into the issues with the center columns in the council chamber. We have set up a meeting for tomorrow morning to talk through possible solutions for that. And the issue there is when they went to cut after they cut the concrete out in the basement to pour the footings, they found that the compaction of the soil underneath is not adequate for the type of footing that they wanted to pour. They had taken soil borings outside of the building, but turns out within the building, it was not good. So now the question is, well, what do we do about it? Do we try to move forward and find some way to increase compaction of the soil or spread out the loading to allow us to move forward with those posts or those columns, replacement columns? Or do we do something as simple, just rewrap the existing post and call it a day? At this point, we have already had the metal beam, the metal header fabricated, and so there's some cost to that. Already invested in that solution. But they found that, the center post is a 6x6 beam, and then it was clad with 2x12s on the outside, or 2x6 or something, to kind of build out the diameter width of the square. You can pull those side pieces off and have it still be loading or bear the load of the roof. I think we're looking at getting what the cost options are for.
So those are just cosmetic, basically.
So basically a portion of the center columns were cosmetic. Yeah, and so they can pull that off.
And it just
and
builds up the
reduce it.
girth, that's all they're trying to do.
Hmm?
It just builds out the girth, if that's what they're trying to do.
That's what they had done. So we can pull some pieces off to make it thinner. But we've already cut the holes in the concrete in the basement, and we've already purchased the large metal header
Mhm.
that is designed to support the roof. So we'll
We'll find out.
structural
Stay
engineer
tuned.
tomorrow morning.
Stay tuned, I believe.
Yeah.
Thanks.
This Gantt chart looks like it's getting into November. Is it going to be open for our 2 precincts there?
So I anticipate the council chamber and section 3 will be back open.
On City Hall.
They have started framing out the elevator pit. So if you drive by, you'll see block outside. And if the elevator hasn't already been delivered, we anticipate that it should be delivered here the next week or so. And basically, we're going to store it in the barn until it's ready to go up. So we all thought that we were going to be waiting on the elevator, but that's not the case, fortunately, yes.
Anything else for us?
And that's it.
Okay. And we'll move down to my report. Wanted to just touch on the conversation that I had with Mr. Lutton, who owns the Sloan Kingsley property, or is one of the partners that owns the Sloan Kingsley property, as well as Scioto Township Supervisor Will Hathaway. The supervisor in Scioto Township does not believe that his board is interested in 425. He personally is interested in exploring it, although I don't necessarily know that he knows what he would want in that at this time. So I did share with Mr. Lutton and the supervisor that we do have an existing 425 with Scioto, as well as a 425 with Webster. And we both asked about some of the provisions that were in that, so we kind of talked through some of that information. And basically, at this point, like I said in the report, Mr. Lutton indicated he needs time to consider what next steps might be. He might be looking at a smaller project. He did submit an application to Siles Land Preservation Program for a portion of the property, so it looks like he's intent on trying to preserve or get some of it preserved, which I know is part of Siles' interest in that. So that's the only conversation I've had with either of them on that topic. On the 31st of August, we had an extra Chamber of Commerce meeting. I included a copy of the agenda in the packet, so you can see what's talked about there. Becky Colbert leads those meetings. That committee is interested in helping in some way, shape, or form with the bicentennial that we have coming up in 2024. And Steve Feynman is one of the representatives on the committee, and he expressed interest in helping organize a parade. Steve is involved in helping the Rotary organize the Memorial Day parade, so he has experience doing this. I thought it was a very good idea, but I thought I would bring that back to this group. And I want to talk a little bit to the ACH team a little bit. I think we as a city need to decide what is it that we want to do and when do we want to do it, and then let any other group that wants to recognize, the 200-year anniversary in their own way surrounding that. But I wanted to get input from others. Do people think that this thing would be anything more than a weekend? Or, I mean, if we had a parade on a Saturday and I don't know, something in the park afterwards, is that enough? I'm open to ideas. But my sense from Becky was that the committee wasn't sure what was going to happen yet. And I think we should figure out when, for one, so we can get the date out there. And then two, what do we as a city want to do on that date? And nothing brings the community together like a parade does.
Yeah, once it's defined, then there will be sections, I suspect, that people could take over.
Yeah, well, if the orchestra wanted to play in the park, they could play in the park. But I think we should define the main event and when it's going to happen to pick that and get out in front of that.
So if I might, sorry.
Please.
From what I remember putting the bicentennial committee proposal together, was that exact idea that there was, the committee will pick a time and there were partners. And it's very interesting because one of the first people that had joined the bicentennial committee and is Quayla Riddle, formerly Cora Lopine. She was at that time president of the chamber. And now she's the president of the Rotary Club. And she was basically representing both groups in the bicentennial. My understanding was that there was a potential week pick. I can double check that with ACH and Justin as well, but my understanding was the week of between Dexter Days and King Dexter Festival was the main week that was picked, with the different activities done. And ACH right now is going through a list in terms of and having recommendations of what the ACH portion or the city portion would be as activities to be done for that week. And then there are things pre that week for celebrations, during, and then afterwards. But you also were more in those meetings than I was for a little while. So.
Okay.
Well, I think that any type of large event usually takes time to plan. So I think it's important that we figure out the date and get the date set, and whether it fits with plein air or extra days or in between or before or after. I guess I don't know the exact date that's been discussed, but I just think it's important to do that. I thought the parade was a good idea. I wanted to share that.
I think, sorry, one more comment is that I was surprised to read that in the sense that I thought Chamber was there during those conversations. So I don't know how much of a handoff on that had happened between that we've been quite a lot in.
I don't want to get anybody in trouble on anything. Everybody's efforts are appreciated, but it didn't sound like there was anything definite. And people are looking to start getting some certainty to it, as I think, so that they can build on it, is the message I'm trying to convey. So, and somebody suggested, I can't remember who, that maybe we look back as to what we did for the sesquicentennial, if I have that right, in 150 years. And maybe there's some history there that proved out to be successful. So. What?
So I know we had started talking about this way back when I was still on ACH. So let me know if I'm remembering this wrong, but we did discuss the idea of having it that week so that the painters would be here to paint some of it, right? And I'm wondering, with that in mind, have you sent out the post-paint texture survey to them yet?
Yes, we have.
Okay, because that's a question I want to ask them. Not that that would change anything, just out of curiosity.
And for paint extra, I always thought it would be interesting to have them use their painter's vision to look back, 200 years and imagine the city 200 years ago as a part of the festival.
So the goal is to keep you all aware of what's being talked about at the chamber, and that they have an interest in helping or doing something if they can. And just think we ought to, again, solidify that date and sort of zero in on things so people know what to expect. And then other community organizations will work their way in around it and support it. I have to say this, Sons on the River was a real good time again this year. Well attended. I think they said there were almost 400 people that participated in supporting the Kern River Watershed Council, another active group in our area, and they do a really good job. We were in Delhi Metro Park this year, and right next to the river. It's funny when you're there, and you walk up and see the river. It's really wide. It's wider than this room, and looks quite menacing. And then you realize that it's this deep. At that location, at the current, it's this deep. We saw a crane walk across. We're like, oh, okay. But and just wanted to give a shout out to the work that they're doing. Does anybody have any questions for me about anything? Okay, then I'll keep this moving. We are down to our consent agenda, please. I'm sorry, are there any council member reports? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to consent agenda.
I move to approve the two items listed on the consent agenda, bills and payroll, in the amount of $418,834.78, and the closure of Central Street from Main to Fifth for Apple Days.
Second.
Second by one, thank you. Ms. Pam, if you would call the vote to approve the two consent agenda items, please.
Michelle?
Yes.
Fisher?
Yes.
Griffin?
Yes.
Arad?
Yes.
Hubbard?
Yes.
Keel?
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you. We have no unfinished business, and we have two items of new business this evening. The first is the consideration, that's our only action item tonight on new business, consideration of Connecting Communities Grant Application Resolution for the Grand Street Pedestrian Connector. If we can get a motion in a second, then we can just do a little update on the grant application. So moved by Fisher,
Oh, second.
second by Juan. Thank you both. Justin?
Sure. So, and actually, Josh worked quite a bit on this grant application, so I'll
Perfect.
let Josh provide any updates or thoughts.
Any updates about, as you already know, over by, on Grand Street, next to, along the Grandview Commons, kind of northern property line, there's gonna be a paved pathway that's gonna be done by A.R. Brower, and it's gonna end up connecting up to 250 feet with a boardwalk that we are going to construct over the wetlands, so that's kind of what we're applying for the boardwalk section, just for the a portion of the construction fees for that.
And so we're applying for 75,000 from the Connecting Communities Fund, which is pulled from a portion of the Washington County Road Village. We do have this project budgeted for this fiscal year, so the idea is to try and get a bid out at the end of this year, start construction next fiscal or next spring. And hopefully try and beat Brower's construction of their piece, so that way we're not interrupting or doing any damage to the paved piece that they're installing.
Have we talked to the county? Are they expecting us?
That they are.
Good, great.
Yeah, so I looked through the application. I thought, Josh, if you're the one who wrote it, you made a compelling case. I mean, in my mind, I personally don't know how necessary it is, but I understand it's a decision and direction that was made in the past. So you did a great job selling it.
Zach?
Were the folks at the county cranky that the materials had to be received August 31st and this resolution hadn't been touched yet?
They're aware that they weren't phased by it. And we did actually submit is the first draft of the application with a note that resolution to be provided.
Any further questions on the action before us tonight? Okay, Ms. Pam, please call a vote to approve the resolution.
Michelle,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
Arab,
Yes.
Burton,
Yes.
Hubbard,
Yes.
Keel.
Yes. Motion carries. Our last new business item this evening is discussion of the fire station design and village information publications. Justin, I'll turn this directly over to you to walk us through what's here and next steps and take any questions.
Sure. So as we've previously discussed, there is a user group that is meeting to prepare documents and floor plan, site plan, 3D rendering, and cost estimates for both locations, 8140 and MAV for the fire station. That includes myself, Interim Chief Armstrong, Councilmember Rob, David Gasson, and folks from Partners in Architecture. We've had 2 meetings so far, and I saw over the weekend that there was kind of a flurry of questions coming from Partners in Architecture to Chief Armstrong on some floor plan details that are really most relevant to DAFE and getting answered. So David was able to provide some draft floor plans, some basically hand sketched renditions of where we were at that point in the process. And this was as of Wednesday. I think our meeting was on Tuesday. We looked at these on Tuesday, and then packet went out on Wednesday. But these schemes are most relevant to the MAV site, and they are also in flux. The idea was to look at ways and means to reduce square footage to bring the cost of the buildings down to the budget that had been set with a total maximum not to exceed 9.4 million, all in, including contingency and everything. I don't know so now if you have any other thoughts.
I think from my perspective, it was a very nice collaboration and back and forth between David and Partners in Architecture and the interim chief, and they both are working very hard to put what we were asking from them as fast as possible, and we'll wait to see.
Yeah, and so our last meeting is on, I believe it's Friday the 16th, with a quick turnaround of final documents for Wednesday's packet for the next meeting. I don't know if anybody has any questions about that process so far.
Donna?
I don't have questions about the process, but I don't know who composed some of this historical data, and I don't know how far it's gonna go, where it's gonna go.
So that's what I was gonna
You realize that.
go
we're missing-
on to next.
Yeah, okay, you know that we're missing an entity here under, when it was formed.
Yeah.
Okay, yep, okay, just so long as you're aware. 'Cause
Yeah.
I thought, if we're gonna print this, we ought to get it right.
Yeah, so, kind of moving on to the second of the two kind of topics within the fire station, which is, the millage informational publications. Josh and I, put together a set of documents that, were pulled from other communities, and I really appreciate Josh doing the legwork on, finding some other communities and organizations, millage publications or millage educational information. And then we worked on putting together, taking the Green Oak Township, I think it was, couple pager that you had seen at a previous meeting, and then trying to apply information relevant to the city of Dexter to the categories that they had provided. And this is by no means intended to be a final draft, but it's intended to kind of provide at least some of the information that could be provided in such a publication. So I wanted to get council's feedback on that direction. A couple of thoughts that I had was, once we do have a final draft of this couple pager, we could have it at the city offices. We could also include it in the city's newsletter, which we'll shoot to have a newsletter out towards the end of September. And then have it also up on the website and be able to direct people to that website.
Something that, I think the person that came to mind in terms of additional information we might want to include on the informational packet was something that was helpful to me. And I couldn't pull it up immediately, but in one of our packets at some point, we saw kind of like a timeline of the city's millage rate. That basically indicated the city's portion of people's tax bill really hasn't increased over time. Even though they've noticed an increase, it's been due to these county-wide millages, not necessarily to the city. So if there's some way we can incorporate that historic trajectory, and I don't know if a statement needs to be made or whatever, but just including that, here's the historical reference of here's what the millage rate has been. And I did see in one of the other packets, they included their breakdown, maybe the library millage for Hamburg Township on page 108. They do their dollar bill thing, which like we get in our tax bill. I don't know if that's valuable to include or not, but the first part, I think I would like to see. People will go, oh, okay, I think that's a city's millage rate that's been going on.
So Justin, what do you expect to have for us then at the next meeting, based upon the timeline that you've got and what you're working towards?
Yeah, so at the next meeting, we're hoping to provide floor plans, cost breakdown, and 3D rendering of the 8140 option, MAV option, and then MAV option with sheriff at 8140. We're also hoping to provide some sort of final draft that maybe looks a little bit nicer of this information here.
Okay.
Along with any feedback that council has or anything that you think would be appropriate to go into this. The other part is I'd like to put this in front of Scott Munzel to make sure that it is legally appropriate and meets election requirements for such publications.
So if anybody's got any edits or thoughts on it, let's try to get that into Justin in the next week or so, so that he could have it ahead of time for the next packet. Simon?
Question, are you thinking of basically the final product would be text like that or one of the more visual?
I was thinking something a little bit more visually appealing. But some of the ones that I personally like the best are the Midland County Road Millage and the City of Three Rivers. Especially the City of Three Rivers with it being like a one-pager. But the kind of trifold is also nice.
Justin, at the last meeting, I think we authorized $20,000.
Mhm.
Do we need to take any action further tonight, or are we gonna do that at the next meeting, or
So-
how are you controlling the cost of this?
So I talked to David and verified that 20,000 would get us to the next meeting.
Oh, great.
And he confirmed that it would. I did also talk to him about costs incurred to date. And I think in the last packet, I indicated that we hadn't paid Partners in Architecture since 2020 or something like that.
Well, let's start by saying we hadn't been invoiced by.
Well, we hadn't been invoiced from Partners in Architecture. But kind of our one thought is that if we do choose to proceed with Partners in Architecture into the construction phase of this, David could build that into his proposal.
So 20,000 that we authorized last meeting,
Yeah,
down from the 42 that was originally estimated, he's good with through the end of September.
correct.
It's good. It's good news.
Yeah, and you know, there were, I think he was imagining something a little bit more in depth or more kind of construction oriented, whereas we're looking at more help make the decision or help inform decisions oriented. As far as like graphic design.
Zach?
I'll try to be brief here. Has the working group discussed the challenges with the fact that the current fire station is considered a legally non-conforming use? And we be an expansion that require and the cost and time of that or no?
We didn't specifically get into it, but both the chief and David are aware that that is the case.
Okay. The follow-up is, was there any discussion? So part of the increased costs of the new structure is that our zoning ordinance requires a fancy building on the outside with masonry and other stuff. Was there any discussion of exploring not doing that?
The challenge that we've pitched to David is to bring the project down to 9.4 million all in. And I think that he is looking at it holistically, which is square footage and building materials. So I think he knows that we want a nice looking building, but he's also cognizant of the fact that there is quite a bit of dollar value in the materials and
Corrugated metal sheeting is a lot less expensive than brick. Final question here, and then I'll be quiet for the rest of the night. It's my understanding, because of language on the ballot, that even if this council should vote 7-0, that this is the plan, and we put pretty colors and we have videos that folks can go, there's no way that we can bind the next council that builds this to follow that plan. Would that be a fair statement?
I would think so. I mean, if this council voted and when you start making expenditures towards a kind of final product, you don't want to go back on the dollar figure or the dollars that the council has spent towards the project. But if there's been no money down towards the final design, then
Well, I think that's slightly different. It's you don't want to, but for example, if it said we're going to shall the city of Dexter collect $8.5 million to build a pink building? We have to build a pink building, right? Versus we vote to do a pink building and then we buy the paint. We don't want to return the paint, but we could still buy a different color paint, paint it whatever.
you could.
Okay. I'm done. Thank you.
Could the city enter into some sort of conditional contract with a conditional on the passing of the law? Like if a provider of services was wanting to do that, would that be a way to bind it? I mean, if that's what people wanted to do, I guess the idea was brought up. Could the current council enter into a conditional contract pending approval of this millage that the city of Dexter commits to X, Y, and Z at this location, at blah, 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 blah,
You
With that
could, but you might have a really hard time finding contractors.
Yeah, I don't,
Yeah, that's a. Can I just respond for, or
yeah,
Harold? So I mean, I think it's important that we all, as a council and staff, promote the fact that we're looking at multiple options, but we don't have a final design on any location. And it's gonna cost several $100,000 to have an architect put together a set of plans and specs for either one of these options. It hasn't made any sense yet to do that without knowing that we have the support of the residents to pay for a significant improvement, whether it's at A or B. So the question that's on the ballot is the 8.4 million and up to 2 mils. I think even as recently as last meeting, both of you expressed that you'd like to see out of this exercise, what can we do for less than 8.4? I mean, you mentioned 9.4, that's taking the 8.4 and the 1 million that we've committed in cash to show we've got skin in the game already. But the goal isn't just to spend 9.4 to spend 9.4. The goal is to spend as best to get the biggest bang for the buck that we can out of the 8.4 million or the up to 2 mils. And based upon everything that's been presented to us before, either one's going to be a hell of an investment in a fire station. It's going to be the most significant investment in a fire facility in this county in a long time, if we go to that level. And you know, at the state we're at, where these drawings, I mean, everybody can look at them in the packet with me. These are hand drawn in a lot of cases. I mean, there's some formality to them, okay, that they cleaned up some things, but they're still tweaking areas. I mean, it's not unheard of at this stage of a design to have a 10 or even a 15% contingency at this stage. The 10 or 15% is the $1 million that we have in cash, which means the design and all the other stuff needs to come in under the 8.4, I think. I think that's what we're pushing for. Now, it might be float a little, and Zach's question about materials, I think is on. We should be asking what materials, that's one of the things that should come out of here. What materials yield a station that yields the best value? I don't want anybody to think that, I mean, we need to have some certainty on whether the community is going to support this significant investment before we take the significant step of diving into all these detailed plans and specs, which means it's going to be, I mean, even if in November it passes, it's probably going to be a, what, 4 to 6 month design process before we actually know all the final details of bidding. I mean, to Zach's point, it's going to take a little bit of time after the point to get there.
Well, and to kind of build on that, it'll also depend on what process we use too. If we want to use a construction manager at risk process, then we would select that vendor first before we even get into potentially the bill or the construction bid. We could, you know, set the dollar value and bid it out and say, you know, or basically put out as an RFQ, saying CMs can come fully stocked and what, you know, what your subcontractors look like.
But even then, you have,
CM.
even if you do a construction management risk, you still have to have a concept, they have to know what they're getting into. They have to have something to base their idea of expertise on.
Yeah.
Son?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that both Justin and I tried to be very clear for David that, yes, we said the 9.4, but that we are looking for something else, as others have also expressed interest, and that if we think of 9.4 as the max, that should include all the contingencies and all those things that might be relevant to either of those plans. So it's all of that should be in there. And the other thing is that, as Justin mentioned, David is really looking at this holistically. So there are even conversations with Chief Armstrong even in the sense of, you know, lockers and bathrooms. And so hallway, so there is a lot of back and forth in that. That is, will include a lot of geek houses, so it.
Zach?
I was gonna be done, but I just want to clarify the point that we're not, the ballot question is for amount, not an up to mills. The 2 mills is what's necessary to support the debt today with our taxable value. If our tax value goes up, we got a bunch of development, new stuff, that drops down. If we hit a massive recession and our property values tank, it could rise. It could go from 2 to 2.5 to 3%. Whatever that mill rate is necessary to support the debt service is where it rolls. Right now, it looks like it's 2, but it flows.
That's correct. Does anybody have any other questions or feedback on?
Maybe on the educational thing, if there's a way to include either if there's a meaningful website to link back to, if I was just looking at ours, I don't know if you feel like that's what organizing on, or if there's contact information there, you know, just some like point of contact, I guess.
Do you think that the comments that Doug provided are going to increase the reduced footprint that's here by more, or do you think that the approximately 20% reduction is what we should expect to see?
I would expect to see a pretty significant reduction, so are probably in the range of it was 4,040, 4,500.
Okay, so this is the expected reduction. Just, okay.
Yeah,
You don't expect it to go more.
I wouldn't expect it to go more.
Okay, so the effort here is basically going from 20,000 to 16 or something like that, is what they're showing here. Okay, thanks for keeping the process going. Any other comments on this for now? I appreciate you putting it back at what you had. And look forward to the next meeting. Okay to go to council comments? Fine, I'll start with you. Okay. Jamie? Don?
No, thank you.
Zach?
With Paco Bicentennial, I'm reminded of when I was in the Michigan Marching Band in 97, 98, and it was the 100th year of the band, and we got these little pins that we had to wear on our uniform, which kept popping off because it's really thick wool and the back end doesn't. To this day, I'll still have nightmares of getting ready to go through the tunnel and not having the stupid little pin popped off somewhere marching band. I will say my email and phone has been lighting up with folks who are concerned with they don't know what they're voting for, including former firefighters and folks who are very supportive who said they're going to vote against it because they don't know what they're voting for. So I would caution that should this fail in November, it doesn't mean there's not support. It means there's not support for handing $8.5 million without a clear identified plan.
Thank you. Sonny? What?
I guess my only comments would be Zach, I would have maybe appreciated that comment during the discussion so we could talk openly as a council about what you're hearing from people.
Okay, we are down to non-arranged participation. Please state your name and address for the record.
Hello, Joseph Farrell, 3214 Boulder Court in Westridge. I'm saying Westridge because I wanted to talk just a little bit about the speeding, the complaint that was on Westridge. So that's not me. Literally exactly where you guys were talking about tonight was the same thing that was discussed, the exact same location 10, 12 years ago, somewhere at that time. At the time, somewhere around that time, we were talking about getting that radar sign for the first time. And the way that radar sign was advertised was put up the radar sign and don't display anything on it. And just take data and find out what you have. Then turn it on the sign and take data again and see how it changes. See if you can affect people that way. We actually did put that sign on East Ridge at that point in time because we got those complaints. What they actually found at that time was that there was not speeding on East Ridge. There was some speeding. I mean, there's always some variation around it, but the distribution of the speeding around that did not indicate that either the speed limit that was there was not correct or that there was an excessive amount of people that were speeding. Those streets in West Ridge are set up, what the spec was then, I don't know what the spec is now, 4 streets, but they were set up to be parking on one side of the street. So they're a little bit narrower than regular parking on both sides of the streets. They're not quite as narrow as they would be if there was no parking on the streets. But they are fairly narrow. There are people with kids in that area. I literally had a situation where my son, when he was first driving, 16 or 17 years old, he was coming down East Ridge, came around there and came up Boulder Court, and one of the neighbors at the end of the street chased him down the street. And I heard him from inside as they were yelling at each other on the driveway. So I went out and I talked to this neighbor and I said, what is going on? He said, Jay was coming down through there, the kids were out playing, and I was worried about him. And I said, what is he speeding? And he said, no. I said, well, why was that a concern? He said, well, the kids were out there playing and he didn't slow down. People are not rational when it comes to their kids sometimes. It doesn't matter what the speed limit is and if people are going the speed limit or not. In some cases, you know, it's a 25-mile-an-hour road and people can be concerned. I understand completely. You have to take precautions with your children. That being said, if it is too fast, and it can be fast going down East Ridge, especially if you're going to go down to Park Ridge or down to the cul-de-sac, it is a long straight run. You could go relative, and it's actually downhill. So you could see where that kind of stuff would happen. If it is a concern, if you put the speed radar out there and you find it is a concern, and you have data that says so, then we should be looking at traffic calming devices that are published and understood. We can try and narrow up the street to the park. We could make it much narrower, say there is no parking. We could put a roundabout in at East Ridge and Bridgeway. There's things that we can do in there that won't affect the snow plowing and will calm the traffic. So what we usually do is we get the complaint, we might even get the data, and then we say, well, we really can't do anything because we can't get the speed. If we want to, we can do things. They may be expensive, they may be long-term, they may need to go on the CIP, but there are things that we can do with those things. So I'm encouraged to think down to what the next steps are and what things that traffic engineers will tell you can be done to address those type of problems. On the fire millage, there are going to be some people on council when they speak to residents, they will say the same thing that I've said to them, and that is that there are going to be a couple of different designs out there. You will get a chance to see what those are. Whatever we do, it will be an excellent addition to the community. It will be a huge improvement. It will last for the next 50 years, and it will serve our community well, and it'll do the things that we need it to do. There will be people who will not say that and will, even though they know that is the case, and they know that it's going to improve things and it's going to work for the community, are going to tell those residents half of the story so that it sounds like it's a real problem and that they should support it. That's not what this community needs. This has been going on a serious discussion for at least 4 years. And you all know that about 3 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, it was ready to go on the ballot. The discussion of the next council, how do we bind the next council? This is the next council. Ms. Fisher is the only one that will not be here, most likely. I mean, most likely. You have
Unless
five,
I'm haranguing you from out there.
right, you have five sitting here. This is the council. You're not, don't worry about binding anybody or anything. You're the same people that are gonna have the same discussion. So this isn't a discussion of now and what might happen in the future. There's no reason to talk about binding the council or what's going on. So I hope each of you will encourage, tell the people that you talk to exactly, you've got a lot of design work that's gone in and can be used on a smaller scale than what was originally proposed. And it's going to be good for the community. And I hope you'll support it with the community as well. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments this evening. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to speak this evening? Josh, can you help me see on the screen? Is there anybody that has their hand raised online that would like to speak?
I don't see anybody with their hand raised.
Okay, nobody in the chat room saying they're trying to raise their hand and don't know how. Okay. I will seek a motion for adjournment, please. Moved by Sanal,
Okay.
second by Donna. All those in favor, signify by saying aye, please. Aye. Those opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for attending in person.
Good night. Good night.